So one of the most recurring questions in my inbox from young trainers is how to build a career in the fitness industry, or more specifically, how did I get to the position that I'm in the fitness industry? I thought it'd just be good to just lay it all out in a video. So this is how I think you should build a career as a personal trainer or a strength and conditioning coach. To me, they've always been the same thing. I've always managed to have a hand in both fields, or especially more recently. So whether you want to just be the best personal trainer possible, or if you want to go more down the strength and conditioning path, it's basically the same advice that I give to everyone regardless, because it's how I did it. And ultimately, I think it's how it should be done. So just a bit of an overview of my career. If you're not familiar with me, I've been a personal trainer for about 11 years. I ran a successful face-to-face business for over 5 years. I've run a successful online business coming up to about 5 years now as well. I have worked with clientele ranging from just regular mums and dads all the way up to like sort of C-suite level corporates. And on the strength and conditioning side, I've also worked with everyone from your everyday amateur athlete just trying to get through a half marathon, all the way up to the professional level in a variety of different codes, Olympians. I've also done education for strength and conditioning coaches and personal trainers at all levels, all the way up to the pro sport and organizational level. I've also managed to do that while maintaining a pretty decent lifestyle, especially for the last 5 years of my career. There's definitely what me and my mates like to refer to as a shit eating phase that I think everyone must go through as a trainer. But yeah, I'm definitely not someone where my job controls me. I have a pretty good lifestyle. I kind of wake up and do whatever I want every single day. So if you're interested in having a career in fitness like that, I suggest you listen up. And more importantly, if you want to be mentored by me, you can actually get that for a really, really good price. Check in the notes down below. I've got my GPP level 1 course. So there's an entire training curriculum in there, but as well, we hop on 3 live calls a week. You also get access to me through a Discord. So I really think it's good if you're an aspiring trainer. You can check that out down below. All right, so let's get into it. How do you forge a career in the fitness industry? Well, step one, you have to get qualified in whatever area you're in. I know a lot of people just like to go straight into this idea of becoming an online coach, but I really discourage people from doing that. Maybe it's a bit of an old school attitude of mine, but I just think that there's invaluable and irreplaceable experience you gain from working with people initially in a face-to-face setting that sets you up to be a better online coach down the track. Not that online coaching isn't its own separate skill that you will have to develop at some point, but we'll talk about how you can sort of bridge that gap from face-to-face coaching to online coaching down the track. Ultimately, I don't think it really matters where you get your qualification from, as long as you can be insured to train people and protected in that sense. I think it's fine. To my knowledge, pretty much all the qualifications are pretty garbage. So in Australia, you have to do a certificate 3 and 4 in personal training, and they were talking about, certain rep ranges for toning and things like that. So you're gonna learn some cooked stuff in your certification, but ultimately it's just important that you can get qualified so you can get your insurance. Most of your good learning will come on the job. And the 2 biggest factors that are gonna fast track your learning in this field are training a lot of different clients, and then also surrounding yourself with a lot of different trainers. Now you'll notice that I didn't say surrounding yourself from good trainers, because I truly believe that you can learn just as much about what not to do as well as what to do. So you just want to be around a diverse bunch of trainers. And so how do you go about that? Well, if you're not lucky enough to live near a really pumping, super busy commercial gym in a relatively high socioeconomic area, then you're going to have to get yourself into one. So I grew up in a town called Wollongong, which is pretty well-to-do socioeconomically, but it just didn't have any really big commercial gyms. It was just a lot of, especially when I was on the come up, smaller private facilities. They didn't actually have a private contractor or a rent-based model. They'd want you to be an employee and want you to train their clients, which, like I said, if you're just looking for any start, I don't think that there's anything wrong with working under someone for a little bit and training someone else's clients, but pretty quickly, I think you want to get yourself into a private contractor role where you're paying rent at a facility and you're looking for your own clients that are paying you directly. It's not that there aren't any good employment opportunities in the fitness industry, but I promise you, all the best opportunities will come from working for yourself and just taking on a little bit of risk and responsibility for yourself. And so for me, that meant commuting back and forth about 4 hours a day, just so I could get myself into a facility that had 30 other trainers. Again, 50% of them were absolute lunatics. The other 50% of them were quite good. A few of them were actually amazing. But the best thing about this facility is it was directly under two major bank buildings up in the city, and the gym was getting about 8 to 10,000 swipes a week. So it was just a really, really good environment where you could walk the floor, work on your social skills, and there was just always clients to be found on the gym floor. You didn't have to sort of like be hassling the gym manager, or you didn't have to be running your own Facebook ads or anything like that. It was just you walk into the gym and that's where you're going to be able to find people to train and people to pay you. All right, anyway, so once you found a facility to work at that has a pumping gym floor and is in a decent socioeconomic area, then you're going to do what's known as working the floor. So this is the way that I predominantly found the majority of my clients, especially at the start. You just walk around the floor and you try to learn as many names as possible, and you just try to help people have a better experience in the gym. And this is a little bit of a long game strategy. It's not your typical like high pressure sales, overcoming objections type strategy, which, don't get me wrong, maybe it'll be useful for your first couple of clients, but if you don't want your business to operate like a revolving door, then you definitely want to just be playing the long game. And like I said, just developing rapport with people on the gym floor by getting to know them, understanding their goals, and just trying to be as helpful as possible. Because if I've learned anything over the years, it's that people are looking to buy from people that they like. So it's just important to be liked on the gym floor. And then as soon as it pops into someone's head that they might need a personal trainer, you'll be exactly who they're looking for. I think there are a lot of people who enter these rent-based models expecting the personal trainer or the gym themselves just to be like handing you leads. And the gym or the personal training manager might actually promise to do that for you, but you should not expect it. And this is not where your highest quality of lead will come from, because it'll be so hard to build trust with them. And it's kind of like this like blind date scenario. The odds of it working out well, very, very small. Whereas if you just work the gym floor, get to know people, be useful to people, before you know it, everyone will be asking you to train them. Now, don't get me wrong, I definitely struggled with this personally for a number of years, but it was more just due to a lack of self-awareness and a complete lack of social skills. So depending on how long it takes you to develop that skill set, you might struggle for a little bit in the early stages of personal training. But that's another thing I sort of want to address. Like, I think a lot of people, they see trainers like myself and they assume that we're just successful the moment we dropped into the industry. I really struggled to pay rent at my gym and I couldn't afford to move out of home. Shout out to my supportive parents for the first 3 or so years of my career. Considering 95% of trainers completely quit in their first 6 months in the industry, you're not failing if you're just fighting for survival in those first few years. And it can get to the point where you're like, oh man, like surely if I was going to be successful at this, I wouldn't have been struggling for this long. But yeah, for me, like I said, it really was 3 years of struggling pretty hardcore before I even just got to like a stable level of decent amount of income, could afford to pay all my bills, pay gym rent, and live out of home on my own. So just embrace the shit eating phase, and I promise you what's on the other side of that is worth it. And like, it's really not that bad. You're hanging out at a gym all day, you got plenty of time to train. So like I said, if you're lucky enough like me to be able to live with your parents up until you're 25, and like I said, it wasn't like my parents lived right near this gym. I was still commuting 4 hours a day. So I'll let you make your mind up about like how hard I really had to grind in those early years. I know there's people a lot less fortunate than me that get kicked out of home, and living with their parents isn't an option for them. But again, I'm just sort of speaking to my experience and what has been useful for most of the trainers that I've mentored. So once you've got good at working the gym floor and acquiring leads like that, you start to realize that like there's this weakness to your business where you are essentially trapped, not just on the gym floor, but specifically in your gym. Like, you know, there might be a middle manager you don't like, or there might be a gym that you really want to work at, but then it'd be on you to be able to develop your own lead generation systems. But you can do that once you've got a stable base of clients, because then you have options of referral networks. So after working the gym floor and acquiring like your first 20 customers or so, or your first 20 regular customers, you'll probably go through 40 clients before you get to the point where you've got at least 20 stable customers per week. That's where you want to start asking your clients that you've already got a good result for, do they have any friends that they think would be interested in becoming clients? Or do they have any friends who want to lose a little bit of weight? Do they have any friends who are looking to get a little bit bigger, stronger, faster when they're playing footy on the weekends? This is where your highest quality of lead will come from early on, because they've already got a sense of trust built up when it's coming as a referral from a friend. And this also expands your lead generation capabilities, so you're not constrained just to the gym floor where you're currently paying rent. Like I said, there might be some facility that you've dreamed of working at where, you know, you've just got to have your leads coming from outside of the gym. And other than developing an online brand or using meta ads or anything like that, referrals are going to be the best way to go about that. So let's call this like phase 2 of the career. You're going from being forced to find the busiest pumping commercial gym in the highest socioeconomic area that you can find. And then there's like the facility that you dream of working at. And you get there by just developing a steady roster of clients and then opening up your referral network. A lot of the sexier gyms that trainers aspire to work at, they actually don't have a pumping gym floor because it's kind of just like a gym that trainers want to work out of. So it's not as much of an option just to work the gym floor. You got to have leads either coming from referrals or from the online space. Once you get to the point where you're training like 30 to 40 customers a week, you might start to realize that like if you're going to scale your business, you've either got to push into the online space and get a lot of online clients, or you've got to push towards a more semi-private model in a face-to-face setting. For me, I really like sharing my opinions on things online, so I sort of pushed into the online training side of things. This is also where you genuinely have to be mindful of your time. I talk to a lot of coaches who have very successful face-to-face businesses, but they struggle to have the energy and the creativity to post content consistently because at the end of the day, if you want a pumping online business, that's kind of part of the deal. And this is where you might have to sacrifice some short-term income to actually play the long game, because if you have a lot of responsibilities outside of the gym, if you have a family, if you have 40 to 50 clients, it's going to be very, very hard at the end of the day to have the energy to be creative and to show up and make content and post that consistently. And this is where I was really grateful that I sort of intuitively capped myself at 30 or so clients a week, because that was enough money for me to survive on, but it also left me this creative space where I could develop an online business, and I actually had a lot of energy for it. So don't be surprised if you struggle to scale your business or develop an online brand if you are just crushing sessions constantly and that's taking every bit of energy out of you. You actually need to be able to sort of create the time to be a little bit bored, and that's ultimately what gets the creative juices flowing that leads to really good content creation and things like that. As far as developing a brand, I think a lot of people, when they hear that you've just got to be posting content constantly, they're like, oh, so you just got to talk about like random fitness topics all the time. That's absolutely not the case. You'll notice that most successful content creators, even the ones that are posting every single day, if you went through their content, you'd be able to sort of sort it into 4 or 5 buckets. And some people would refer to this as your niche, but I don't really like looking at that because I think consciously choosing a niche is kind of cringe, and a lot of people just get bored at the end of the day, or their interest will change over time. So, I think people talk about like authenticity, and it is kind of a cringe topic, but I think if you're honest with yourself, there's probably like 4 or 5 aspects of fitness that you're like really passionate about talking about all the time. And at the end of the day, your niche emerges, especially in the online space, just off the back of being yourself. Like, just to clarify, at the start, don't worry about a niche. You should be training anyone and everyone, but sort of in the online space, like I said, there should be about like 4 or 5 different buckets of content that you're just constantly going back to. And over time, that's sort of what emerges as your niche. But it's not something that's consciously selected. It's something that's intuitive and just authentic. You just show up and be yourself, and there's a certain type of person who will likely be attracted to that. And this is where you do get to make that really nice shift from just training anyone and everyone you can get your hands on to then training people who are a bit more aligned with your personal values. And it's a really enjoyable part of developing your online brand and scaling your business, just getting to work with much more like-minded people. And so if you're one of those trainers listening to this that's cranking out 40 sessions a week and doesn't have any of the creative juices or energy left to post content, just reflect on your customer base. I guarantee you there's like 2 or 3 clients that you really just don't gel with as a people, like you're just not aligned. And this isn't to say that they're a bad person or anything like that, but it's that client where when you know it's time for their session, you dawdle to the session. Maybe you spend like 30 extra seconds just like dragging your heels in the staff room and being like, oh no, Eva's here. Eva was the name of my problem client who took me ages to sack, but as soon as I did it, it made showing up to work so much better. Like, so many of you are just training a couple of people that if you sack them, you'd enjoy your work so much more. Anyway, that's a topic for another video, but just make sure that you're somewhat constrained with the amount of face-to-face work you're doing. Otherwise, you're never gonna have the energy to develop an online brand and scale your business in that space. Other than having your content pillars, or those 4 or 5 buckets that you're sort of always going back to shape your content, how do you actually build a following online? I use the same principles that help me get customers in a face-to-face setting in the online space as well, because it works just as well, if not better. Social media is just like a busy gym floor that never shuts off. You just want to be showing up as consistently as possible and just trying to help people, but just being cognizant that people have very short attention spans and it's a very cluttered environment. So the way you want to think about it is you just want to give people the most value per second of consuming your content compared to anyone else out there. So I think a lot of trainers, when they start out a post, they're like, hey, my name's Angus and today I'm here to talk about X. And it's like, you've already burnt the clock and people have just already scrolled past you. Just start giving people helpful information from the zip. Just come out swinging in the first 3 seconds, slap people in the face and be like, hey, here's what you're doing wrong in your workout. Here's what you need to be doing. Or here's a really commonly held incorrect belief about fitness. Here's the correct information that you can go and apply in the gym tomorrow. One other thing I'll say to this is, once you're in the online space, you probably want to be targeting a bit more of an intermediate type client, because these are the people that are actively seeking fitness information in the online space and like following a lot of fitness accounts. Whereas, people who are sort of beginners, with beginners, it's far less likely that they're actually scrolling around on Instagram looking for fitness content. Whereas intermediates, they're the biggest market in the online space, in my opinion. And they're the easiest ones to attract because, like I said, they've just got this ravenous appetite for fitness content. Because of the nature of the internet, when you start building a reputation or a brand online, it's amazing the way it spreads across the world. It is truly one of the most rewarding things I've ever done with my life, just getting into content creation. I think a lot of maybe more self-identifying intelligent trainers aren't as attracted to the online thing because it's just perceived as a bit of a shit show. There's just a whole bunch of lunatics and charlatans in the online space. But in my opinion, that's even more of an incentive if you are a decent trainer with your head screwed on right, why you should push into the space, because we just need more reasonable people in the online fitness environment. For me, it's also opened up the opportunity to travel around the world doing seminars. I've been over to the UK, I've been to the US, I've been to different parts of Europe to do seminars. I've traveled my entire country doing seminars, meeting up with other coaches and other like-minded people. It's extremely rewarding. It also opens up the opportunity to do things like, developing digital products or courses and things like that. I think the best thing about being in the online space is it can be whatever sort of work you want. This isn't to say that once you push into the online space that you have to abandon face-to-face coaching. I did for a little bit, just mainly due to the travel schedule that I had, but recently I've sort of got back into a mix of face-to-face coaching and online coaching because, like I said, the only thing that you miss out on in the online space is just being there in the room when your client hits a PR. I think that nothing replaces that at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, that's why I became a trainer. I want to be in the room when someone's hitting a PB or running the fastest they've ever run. Not that it's not satisfying getting sick results with people online, but it's ultimately satisfying being there in the room. But just having a little bit of both, I think that leads to the most satisfying career, but also the most stability and the most financially rewarding. You probably can't charge people as much for online training as what you can charge face-to-face. But the face-to-face action is a little bit more finite than what you can offer people online. So yeah, anyway, that's a little bit of an overview of what sort of shaped my career and the path that I've been on in the fitness industry over the last 11 or 12 years or so. If you're interested in learning from me, there's a link to my course, GPP Level 1, down below. I think it's incredibly affordable for the value that you get inside. You get basically unlimited access to me, whether it's through the Discord or the 3 live calls that we hop on each week, as well as an entire curriculum just on showing you my training model and how I think you get the best results, getting people bigger, stronger, faster. I'm sorry there hasn't been many videos over the last few weeks. Just been dealing with some stuff, but I'm hoping to be much more consistent over the next few weeks. So hopefully I'll have another video for you coming out next week, and I'll talk to you soon.